Right. Hi there. Very good evening. And welcome back again to these advanced research methods. And tonight the topic is about this writing research questionnaire. Let's have a look at it. Now, we learned in the past, in the previous sessions, that we may have to collect data from people where we have to do some oral interviews. Maybe we may have to do some self-administrative questions or questionnaires. The questions may be qualitative, quantitative, and there may be groups to answer this question, individuals, unstructured and structured. We learned all of this. So let me go faster on that one. And let me tell you these types of question now. And when we want to speak to people, I discussed this as well before. That is about the open-ended question. Now, example would be, the example is this: why do you want to study MBA? If I have a question like this question is an open-ended question where there is no answer given. So you would write hundreds of questions, hundreds of answers for this different. If I give this to 80 people, all of you 80 people would write 80 different answers. This is what we call the open-ended question. And in researchers, if it is a quantitative research, we don't use open-ended questions. We always use closed-ended question. We use open-ended questions for qualitative researchers because interviews we do. And we ask the question and they give some answers to that. And again, we ask the question based on the answers and so on. We discussed it earlier. So this is what we call open-ended question, because the answer you could give is not defined. You can answer anything you like. And the closed-ended question is about, you ask the same question, why do you study MBA? And you give options: finding a job, promotion, salary, migration. We give an answer. If we give an answer, we call it the closed-ended question. Okay. In quantitative researches, we use closed-ended question because we only want to know what we really want to know. We don't need to know what we don't want to know. Otherwise, they would be writing a lot of things we don't really want to know. It'll be a mess in your research. So, if you go to a course, I told you previous judges and lawyers, when they go for some cross-question examination questions from the parties, they ask the question. And when the parties, when the witness or the accused, when they answer the question, they say, the lawyer says, I don't want to go. No. And I need to know yes or no. And you say all that. Because if you speak things around the message, it makes them confused. I don't know what he exactly wants to know. So he says, I don't want to know all of those answers. Did you do this or not? Yes. No. Question. So a lot of closed-ended questions as well. Did you do it or not? Yes. I'm sorry, there was interruption. Let me get back. Right, so this is an example. Okay, and another example would be, keep it short. We have to make the question very short. Keep the question very short. If you write a paragraph on the question, it will confuse the audience. They may give some wrong message. Again, a close-ended question: what is your gender? So male, female. Okay, that is how it's very short. And do you wish to have a new job after MBA? Yes, no. These are all very simple and interesting questions. Nobody could confuse in the wording of your question. And some questions we call it Likert scale, where you give answers like this: strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. We can say a question: do you think this pandemic will disappear from the world in 6 months' time? And you can say strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. That way. So you can use that way. You can use always, usually, sometimes, rarely, never. These are all answers we could give for Likert scale questions. When you make your questions, depending on the question, you can use different Likert scales. There are some other examples as well: highly satisfied, satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied, highly dissatisfied, things like that. You can use these questions for a reason. Let me take an example for it. Let's say the salary you get paid from this organization is highly satisfactory, highly dissatisfactory. Based on these answers, you get data and find out if the employees have. Speaking question. New question is this: I have run a training program to develop some public speaking and leadership skills. Now I'm asking at the end of the question, end of the training, did this program develop your public speaking skill and leadership skills? That is what the question. Now, when I'm saying this, when I'm calling it double-barreled question, you have two questions here. Question number one, question number two. There are two questions. Do you feel that your skill in public speaking has increased as a result? That's one question. Do you feel that your skill in public speaking has increased as a result of this program? That is one question. The second question is, do you feel that your skill in leading new group has increased as a result of this program? There are two questions here. Now, if you ask a question like this to an audience, if the answer is yes to this and yes to that, he would say yes, there is no problem. But just in case the answer is yes to this and no to that, which answer does he give? Okay, so this is why you ask this question in two pieces. I'm sorry, in two pieces, two questions. You ask this question and yes or no, and you ask this question separately, yes or no. So then you can get a better the exact answer. That is what the example is below. So there is one question, public speaking, and other question is about this one, leading, this one. So two questions. You have to break this into two questions. This is what we call double-barrel question. We shouldn't use this in the research. We have to make it into pieces, into single questions, and avoid assumptions on question. Let me take an example here. What type of internet connection do you have in your home? If you ask this question, you assume everyone has an internet connection. Okay, then only they can answer the question, what type, if they have it only. So what you do, you have to ask the first question, do you have internet at home? Yes or no? Yes or no? Okay, and if it is yes, and what type of internet connection, that is the second question you got to ask. You can't ask this based on assumptions. Okay, so we have to do, otherwise you would get a wrong answer. And avoid jargons and technical terminologies. Now, you see, these doctors, they have their own technical terminologies, and these engineers, they have their terminologies, lawyers, they have their terminologies, psychologists, they have their terminologies. And if you want to collect some data from your audience, a doctor, he may be collecting some data from the patient. A psychotherapist, he may be collecting some data from certain people to study the behaviors of them. A lawyer may be collecting some data from some experts or some people to find out something related to this legal research, where if these people use their own technical terminologies they are familiar with, and it is not going to give the right answer, because the people are going to collect, a doctor using his medical terminology to collect some data from the patient, I don't think the patient would be aware of that word. So we shouldn't use. So what we do, we have to use the language of the person they speak. We have to use the different, the layman language, the easy language, the very normal wordings we should use. We shouldn't use any technical languages, so that we can get this. Example is this: if you ask a question, what kind of set experience would you prefer for your child? If you speak to a parent like this, the parent wouldn't know what the set means. So you have to give them science, engineering, and technology. If you give it, he would say with the right message you want to know. So that is about avoiding technical language and jargons. And avoid overlapping questions. Again, another example here. See, now, what is your income level? $0 to $1,000, $10,000, and $10,000 to $20,000, $20,000 to $30,000. When you see this, look at this, this and this are the same, equal amount. Now, just in case if a person is having $10,000, which answer does he give? Is he giving the first answer or the second answer? Is it, if I earn $10,000 per month, and which answer do I give? Is it the answer number 1 or answer number 2? If I give answer number 2, I am coming within this range, 10,000 to 20,000 range. So that's going to make a mess. So what you do, you ask the question like this: 0 to 10,000, and 10,000. Sorry, 1,001 to 20,000. 20,001 to 30,000. So there is no overlapping here. If you overlap your answers, you have the answer in 2 places in your answers, so that you may get wrong information. So we shouldn't do that, avoiding overlapping questions. And avoid subjective terms. Here, when I'm saying going out, older. Do you think you will still go out when you are older? If you want to study something in this area, when you say going out, what do you mean? Is it going out for a walk, or is it going out for a drink? So you have to clearly say going out for a drink. When you say older, again you have to say the age range, because simply understand, I am very young to my parents. I'm much younger to my parents, and I'm much older to my kids. So when you say older, what is the meaning of it? I'm older. My kids would say my father is an old man. My parents would say my son is a young man. That way. So what is the meaning of older? That is why you have to give exactly the meaning of these subjective terms. We have to give the subject clearly to collect data. Okay, and it is simple here. See, if you want to collect some data, now if you ask the audience, have you ever had pain in your abdomen? When you say abdomen, for some people the abdomen is below the belly button. Some people that is below the chest. They may have different definition for it. So what you do, you don't ask the question this way. This is not right. What you do, you ask this way. You give a picture and say, do you feel pain in this highlighted area of your body? So you would get the right answer. But that is why doctors, they never ask you where the pain is. You would touch the place. Do you have pain here? So it's easy for the doctor to study your body. Okay. So we have to be very clear when you're asking data, when you're asking question to collect data. Otherwise, you wouldn't get the right data. If you don't get the right data, no point of doing the research. You would end up in the wrong context. And avoid double negative. You see, don't you like eating chocolate? When you ask question this way, don't you like eating chocolate? If you say yes, the answer is I do not. If you say no, the answer is I do. If you're a person fluent in English, you may be okay with it. But if you give this to a layman, he may get confused. So rather simply ask the question, do you like eating chocolate? Yes or no? This is better. This is easier, straightforward. You can't confuse your audience. This is not a test to test the English language here. This is to collect the data. So you have to make this question as much as you can in an easy format, as much as possible. Otherwise, you will get the wrong data. Okay, so that is that. Now, let me take the final area where when you want to know, does the learning environment support the achievement of your objectives? I have two subjective terms. When I'm calling it learning environment, what is the meaning of it? When I'm calling it the learning objectives, what is the meaning of it? You have to clearly make mention of. If you ask the learning environment, is it about your lecture? Is it about the course? Is it about the university? Is it about the course content? Is it about the air conditioning? Is it about the ventilation? Is it about the table settings? Is it about the technology? What do you mean by that? So you have to ask everything one by one, because if you simply ask the whole thing in one question and you are giving a closed-ended question as well for a quantitative research, and you give only 4 answers there, and they have to somehow pick one, and then it is not going the right message you really want to know. So you have to clearly explain the learning environment and the learning objectives as well. Okay, otherwise you won't be able to collect the right data you wanted. And the process of developing your questionnaire: first, define the scope and the concept to be measured. What do you want to measure? We understand that, we studied that in the past. When you want to measure, when you want to study the problem and the factors influencing the problem, we should have some indicators. I would say you would remember indicators. Let's say if you want to study the blood sugar level, the indicator is the micrograms of sugar in your blood. So that is an indicator that will indicate if you're diabetic or not. So we have to study, we have to measure that. That is what we have to define first, what we need to measure, the indicators and the relevant indicators. And based on the indicators, you have to develop your question. Okay, after you developing a question, you have to run a pre-test, meaning you have to give this questionnaire to someone or to the audience and see what they understand. Ask them how the question goes. Is it okay? Is it clear to you? Or otherwise, you can give that to collect some data and see the consistency of this data, so that we can understand if the question is fine. When you have some confusion, when the audience side is not understandable, you can rephrase your word, you can rearrange your words, you can replace certain easier words, or maybe you can rewrite the question and you can revise it and you can come back again. It's a cycle. You do this 2-3 times and you finally get out with the right questionnaire that would measure you what you really want to measure. This is the process. So the final area here now, before you hand over the questionnaire, you may have to write a covering letter to the audience, pleasing them. And I'm doing this research for this reason, and please, if you can help me on this, and so on. You have to tell them clearly. And how about this one? Are you collecting this data in anonymous condition? Because most of the times the data you collect would be something sensitive. So you never ask their names or IDs. You just tell them anonymously, just simply fill the form. Don't give anything about your personal details and confidentiality of it. You may have to express that. This will be handled confidentially. So that may be yes. And you may have to tell them the due date of that collection. If you give the question today, you can tell them that I need this tomorrow or in 1 week time. And so on. Okay, so these things has to be written in your application form, in your form, and Hi, I'm so I have lost the line. I think I'm on the other line now. If you have any questions, I'm on my phone now. If you have any